All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BETONLINE. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here to discuss the Denver Nuggets loss last night and what is potentially an injury that the Nuggets are going to have to work through with Nikola Jokic. We don't know a lot about this injury. I don't want to speculate too overly much on it, but I will kind of lay out the scenarios and the situations before we get an actual injury update, because I know the Nuggets fans want to talk about it. So we will talk about it. We will discuss it. We'll talk about Denver getting blown out last night by the Houston Rockets and some small consolation prizes within that game that was overall a pretty bad game. We'll get into it all. Before we do, I want to talk about our sponsor, BetOnline, who are the number one source for everything online betting. They're the world's most trusted betting platform, and whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds and props on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, even NHL and UFC. From touchdowns to three-pointers to hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Nuggets fans, I know, are pretty concerned about Jokic. We will get into that in the second segment for sure. But first segment, we got to talk about the actual result of this game, which was a pretty bad one. Denver loses on the second night of a back-to-back 128 to 108. And the real difference in this one was the turnovers. Houston had 8, and that led to, let's just check the numbers here. 11, or no, they had 11 turnovers. Why does it say 11 versus 8? There must be 3 different team turnovers that they had. Wow. But for 8 total points, the Houston Rockets did, while the Nuggets had 20 total turnovers and conceded 34 points off of those turnovers. That is a difficult thing to overcome. And when you're without Jokic, when you don't have your standard offensive sets, when you're asking other guys to do more, to create more, to take more chances than they usually would, this is naturally going to happen. So I'm not surprised that it happened. I don't think Nuggets fans should be that disappointed by this loss, and I don't think many people were. Honestly, this was a situation where I think a lot of Nuggets fans learned about Jokic's absence along with Aaron Gordon's absence, saw the team that they were facing coming in, and were like, yeah, this is about right. That's about what we expected. And I get it. You never want to concede. You never want to just put yourself into a position where you have to look at the opposing team and be like, all right, yeah, they got us. But so Denver went out there and tried, but Russell Westbrook in particular, I think, really set Denver back from the turnover perspective. He had 5 turnovers and really was responsible for 7 of them in the first quarter. I can think of most of them off the top of my head, but the 2 that he wasn't responsible for were bad passes that the other guys caught, but Murray kind of had to throw the ball wildly into the air to save it, and Christian Braun stepped out of bounds because of the bad pass. So now Westbrook has been great for Denver for much of this time. This is an aberration. He has been mostly just on point, especially over the past month or so. So I'm not going to take anything by this. Hopefully he's just better going forward. But, I mean, he did set Denver back initially in this game. Jamal Murray also had his pocket picked a couple times by Fred VanVleet. He was bullied a couple of times with some physical defense and made some bad decisions. He did shoot efficiently, and there are some small consolations with that. 8 of 14 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3, 22 points, 5 assists. I would say it's overall a pretty solid game for Jamal on the second night of a back-to-back, which I think a lot of people were confused by. But he showed up. He was one of the only guys initially that did. Christian Braun was great on the offensive end and surprisingly terrible on the defensive end. It was very interesting to see that sort of breakdown in a game like this. Christian Braun goes 10 of 11 for the field. He made his first 10 shots, and the only reason he missed the last one was because it was an off the dribble 3-pointer. I don't know if it was a step back or if it was just kind of self-created off the dribble, and it rattled out. Like, he was playing really well on the offensive end overall. He only committed 1 turnover, 22 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist. And you like to see things like that, consolation prize that this is. You like to see things of that nature from Christian, where everybody's going to have to step up in this moment, and you want to see people playing free. You want to see them playing downhill, getting to different spots, maybe trying some different things. And it's nice to be reminded that Christian does have something like this in the bag. It's not going to be like this all the time, but I can see a world down the line, maybe not this year, but next year and the year after that, where Christian is using the DHO from Nikola Jokic, not always getting downhill, but sometimes he's just hitting a pull-up 2. Sometimes he's hitting the pull-up 3 a little bit more consistently, taking it a little bit more consistently. And that should be encouraging to Nuggets fans, who I think has been, like had a very narrow role, of course. And Nuggets fans, I think, have been disassociated from the fact that he actually does have a skill set. So interesting to see it for sure. What was not interesting to see was Michael Porter Jr., who in 24 minutes, he got into foul trouble early, so he gets a small pass for that. But he only attempted 4 shots in 24 minutes. And that's with 2 different point guards on the floor, and Russell Westbrook and Jamal Murray. Denver had DeAndre Jordan on the floor, who took 0 shots. So in theory, there should have been more shots to go around for Porter. But with the turnovers that Denver had yes, Porter did get to the free throw line 7 times. But honestly, like, I would much rather Porter take shots than get to the free throw line at this point, because he's shooting under 70%, I think, again, from the free throw line. Went 4 of 7 last night. 8 points, 3 rebounds, and he got cooked on defense on multiple occasions. Jaylen Green was going off for the Rockets, and he was making some enemies in Ball Arena. He was egging on the crowd, really kind of leaning into the moment that they were way better than the Nuggets, and like he was letting them have it. So it's interesting to see, interesting to watch. Nobody could stop him. Christian Braun should have been the guy to stop him, but he was bad defensively. And Jaylen Green just got wherever he wanted to go. 34 points, 5 assists, 10 of 16 from the field, 6 of 10 from 3, 8 of 8 from the line. Like, he was absolutely cooking. So, I mean, Denver has had problems with that on the perimeter. They've had plenty of issues with that. And if you're a Nuggets fan and you're wondering, well, Jaylen Green just cooked us. Jaylen Green just cooked the Nuggets. What are they going to do in the playoffs when a guy like that, like Anthony Edwards, is going off again? Is Christian Braun going to be able to slow down Anthony Edwards after a full season of being a starter? Like, is he going to, are there going to be other guys like, I don't know, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who are just unstoppable, that Denver can't do anything about them scoring? That's going to be a problem. That's going to be something that I think Nuggets fans have to acknowledge when it comes to whether this team can win a title or not. Yes, the offense has been great for a while, and the defense over the course of the previous 10 games was really good. But the defense last night was non-existent. Denver, I'm looking at the stats here. On ESPN, it says that they gave up a 135 defensive rating. The pace of this game was actually very low. So Houston scoring 128 was a big deal. Part of it, again, Denver's offense being bad, fueling the Rockets' offense in transition. Like, the Rockets had plenty of opportunities there. Jaylen Green had plenty of opportunities there. But that wasn't all it was. And Denver's going to have to look themselves in the mirror and be like, hey, do we have enough from a defensive perspective? Peyton Watson should be one of those guys that really steps up. He did have 3 blocks yesterday, but I still didn't feel like he was playing that great of a defensive game, just in terms of stopping opposing players from taking shots, disrupting them, really getting into the teeth of the defense and or getting into their chili, so to speak. It just wasn't really the case. So Denver's got a lot of questions on both sides of the ball to answer, especially if Joker's going to be out. So I'm curious to see who steps up, curious to see how they handle it. Dario Saric was the backup center last night. DeAndre Jordan was the starting center. He actually, I think, did a pretty good job overall on Alperen Sengun. Sengun got going a little bit in like the second quarter, third quarter, like in that general region. But I don't think he played that great, Sengun. I think that DeAndre Jordan mostly did his job on him. Had 1 steal, 3 blocks, 8 rebounds, but he didn't take a shot, and Denver just wasn't able to get him involved at the rim, which I think is a big problem. But Dario was horrible. he was just horrible on the defensive end, especially. It doesn't reflect in the plus minus. I'm looking at the plus minus numbers now. Every starter's in the minus 15 to minus 20 range, and all the bench guys are in kind of the minus 1 to minus 7 range, in that general vicinity for the guys that played serious minutes. And stuff like sometimes you get into this situation, and then the Rockets bench, I'm sure, wasn't really trying that hard, but Denver could not compete with the Rockets starters. That was very clear from this. I really enjoyed watching Amen Thompson play. He had 4 steals, 2 blocks, 9 rebounds as the power forward / small forward for the Rockets. And then Fred VanVleet was killing them too. Denver, 16 points, 8 assists, 0 turnovers. Fred VanVleet just makes the craziest shots all the time. So part of this is that Denver didn't have a lot of belief without Jokic. I think when you enter a game like that, you need to get off to a good start. And Denver just threw the ball all over the floor. And I don't think they had serious belief without Jokic when it comes to being able to compete with a team like this. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's a misconstruing of what actually happened. But from what I was watching, it felt like the game was slipping away in the first quarter and then seriously slipping away in the second quarter. And then the Nuggets just didn't have anything after that. That's a pretty tough place for Denver to be. But you live and you learn, you move on, and you try to see what happens from here going forward. I look at this and I look at where Denver's at, and I think, all right, well, Julian Strawther's got to play a little bit better. Peyton Watson's got to play a little bit better. Starters, of course, have to play a little bit better. If you get back Jokic, you get back Aaron Gordon, Denver still has a pretty good rotation that they can throw at the Rockets. Would they beat the Rockets in a series? I don't know. We still have to see that over the course of multiple games in the regular season. Hopefully Jokic is back for those. But we're going to talk about it. Let's talk about this on the other side. When we come back, we're going to discuss the Nikola Jokic injury, what I know, what everybody knows, which is not a lot, and kind of get into some of the factors that we will be talking about. We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll. Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Ava's here. Hi, Ava. How are you? Good to see you. Ava's one of my best friends, and always great to see her pop into the chat. You should be working. I know you should be working right now. All right, let's talk about this. The Jokic injury. The Jokic injury is, I think, unknown. Here, I'm actually just going to pull up my article. If you want to go over to milehighsports.com, if you're interested in taking a look, I wrote about what Michael Malone said verbatim post-game last night. He offered very little insight into what the actual injury was. Quote, he hurt his elbow. When asked to follow up, Malone followed up with, and just how serious it was, whether it was something that he had been dealing with for a while. Malone said, nope, it was just something that popped up last minute. Asked for an update on the severity of it. Malone kind of deferred to the training staff as well, saying, quote, I haven't talked to the training staff yet. I will have a conversation with Steve Short to see where we're at with that. Steve Short is the director of gosh, I think it's player performance. He's the leader of the training staff for sure. So that's like he's the guy that will be responsible for all of the health and safety stuff for Denver, just to make sure that everybody is playing well. So this injury, very weird, happened pregame, happened in warmups. At least, like, I had talked to Vinny Benedetto, and he said he was told that he had injured it in warmups. But I've also heard from other people, I won't name who, that Jokic had been dealing with this for a couple days, that this was something that was kind of ongoing. And maybe it wasn't a big factor until warmups, and then he aggravated something, and then that becomes where the injury really happens. Um, Again, I don't necessarily want to speculate too much on that. And so, for that matter, I can't necessarily speculate on the severity of the injury too much because the elbow is just such a complicated injury that you don't know whether it's going to be something that was just like a nerve thing that was just pinched off a little bit, that, hey, I strained something, there's a ligament that's been strained. um, any ligament damage is always going to be pretty concerning. Something that, as a former baseball player, I think about is Tommy John surgery, where because of the amount of baseball passes and the way that Jokic throws the basketball around, how much torque he puts onto his elbow, that it could be a serious thing like that. Again, don't want to speculate, don't want to get people too riled up for what this could actually be. I am not saying it is that, but what I am like, it's where my mind went when we got this kind of injury, and then it was kind of cloudy when it came to the severity of it. So I'm really curious to see what happens when he pops up on the injury report, and what Denver actually looks like, and what they're able to share versus what they're going to list the injury as. Like, is it still going to be right elbow inflammation? If that's the case, does he take anti-inflammatories like Murray and say, "All right, let's get this injury down, let's get this inflammation down, and then once you're good, once you're ready to go, you can keep playing again." If that's the case, that's probably the best case scenario. So I'm hopeful for Denver that that's the case, and that this is just a thing that he will have to manage, as opposed to something that could be a long-term pain for him unless he has surgery to repair it. Um, Look, I don't know more. I really don't. I'm trying to share as much as I can, and without getting myself into trouble, getting anybody else into trouble. Very curious to see what ultimately happens with this, but Denver's going to have to really step up in this moment if he is out for any period longer than a couple games. If he's out for a couple games, Denver will survive. They'll be fine. Like, and who cares, honestly, if they go 0-2 on this Florida trip? Like, if they lose to Miami, if they lose to Orlando, okay, it's fine. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world. Denver banked the games that they needed to bank against Dallas. That was real. Like, those were the ones that mattered most. Did this Houston game matter last night? Sure. Did it matter as much as the Houston games or as the Dallas games? No. Those are ones that I'm thinking a little bit more concerned. But no, we don't have a timetable. We don't have any consistent information on what this is going to look like. And Malone didn't do anything to sort of dissuade the rumors from popping up, from the misinformation to be popping up. So I don't want to spread that, but I also want to be like, hey, I don't know what's happening here. And it would be nice if we got some good information from the Nuggets today. Uh, I don't know what it's ultimately going to look like. Hopefully he pops up as questionable on the injury report for Miami as opposed to out. And like, we'll just see what happens. If they don't provide more information, the Nuggets, then that's honestly probably a good sign, because it means that it's not that serious and he'll be back within range of a week. All right. Within a reasonable range. If they do provide like a serious update, then that I think would be of concern. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to chat about who steps up in this moment. Cedric, I saw the super chat that you put in there. We'll get to that as well. We'll talk about all of that on Pickaxe and Roll. All right. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We will see how it goes. We'll see how it goes with Jokic. Hopefully this is not anything of major serious note. And if they can make it work, if Denver can survive, that would be great. If he's out for any period of time, like we'll talk about it now. Cedric with the super chat says, trade Zeke / Saric. Gosh, get Boucher so Jokic can sleep, can rest, please. I mean, if they can, then great. I think that Saric did put up some numbers yesterday. It was fine. Like it was okay from a numbers standpoint. 3 of 4 from the field, 2 of 4 from the line, 8 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. He missed a couple free throws in a row, and then on like the ensuing possession, Alperen Sengun buried him underneath the basket. Not really a great sign. Can he soak up some minutes while Joker is out? Yes. Is Denver going to lose those minutes most likely? Yes. I want good things for him. I definitely want him to have that opportunity. And you can see the vision of Denver kind of using him like Jokic when he puts up a stat line like 8 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists in 19 minutes. Like that is good. That's a good sign for Denver if he could continue to do that. I don't necessarily believe that he can continue to do that, but we'll see. As for Chris Boucher, I mean, that'll be interesting. I'm not the biggest Chris Boucher fan. I don't necessarily think that he's got the right mind frame for a contender. He's never been on a contender before, never played a serious role for a team that's competing in the playoffs. And I don't know how he would handle that. Now, there is something to be said if Denver was just like playing Chris Boucher and Aaron Gordon as the second unit bigs, like that could work. That could definitely work where he's playing that kind of role. I don't necessarily think that Chris Boucher can play backup 5. He's a little bit too skinny for that. Isn't really providing a lot of rebounding or rim protection. He can do some of it, but I just don't know if that's the role that he would fill and fill well for a team like the Nuggets. Like everybody would be talking about the same thing that they talk about with Zeke. He's actually a 4. He's actually a power forward. Why are you playing him at 5? Well, there's a reason for that, of course. And it's because that's the role that Denver needs to fill. So if he can't fill that one, at least well, then I would be a little bit worried. But look, that's what they have Aaron Gordon for, right? He's going to be the backup 5 in the playoffs. He doesn't need to do all of it. And so that's why you could genuinely see somebody else being the 5 in different locations. But I honestly think what DeAndre Jordan has done over the course of this year has been pretty solid. And if Denver needs to play him for a brief stretch at various points, they probably can. Now, the question is that going to be like too much of a chance for them to take? Can they actually justify doing that when Jordan is so volatile and like sometimes he could play really well, sometimes he can be really solid, and sometimes he could have 2 turnovers in the span of 2 minutes and give up a couple baskets on the other end, and then you're behind the 8 ball in those minutes anyway. That can happen to a lot of guys. I'm not necessarily going to like bury him, but I do think that is probably more likely than him making a positive impact, like a significant positive impact for Denver in those non-Jokic minutes. So in that regard, maybe Boucher's the right call. I just don't think that Denver wants to trade somebody like Zeke Naji and a first-round pick for Chris Boucher. I don't think that that's a good call. Yeah. There's a lot to discuss. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss. Who steps up if Joker's out? That's the next and final thing that we're going to talk about here. Obviously, the first consideration is Murray. I thought he played pretty well, all things considered, in this second night of a back-to-back this last game. He's going to be the focal point of every game plan for Denver that Jokic is out, and he's going to have to score. He's going to have to score relatively efficiently too. Denver's going to need that from him, and they're going to need him to be pretty consistent. He hadn't been super consistent for the first 35, 36 games of the season. And so if he can provide that consistency, if he can step up and be a consistent, like 22 points, 6 or 7 assists, shooting 58% true shooting, 59% true shooting on a consistent basis, that's good enough. That's good enough for Denver to get some wins, especially if they can lock in on the defensive end without Jokic there. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. It's not going to be enough if he's only at 22 and then everybody else stays at their averages. It's going to have to be a village. It's going to be everybody that has to step up if Joker's out. So like Porter, for example, usually averages about 18.5 points per game. He's going to have to be up closer to 20. Russell Westbrook is, I think, closer to like 12 points per game on a consistent basis. He's going to be at 15. Christian Brown, he's going to be at 15. DeAndre Jordan, or if whoever is going to start in his place, probably going to have to be closer to 10 points per game. Somebody that's in a more consistent place. DeAndre Jordan had 0 points in this last game. Denver's got to make sure that he stays involved and that they can actually get some rim rolls. And they can't just get it shut down like they did in this last game. Now, I understand why things were tough in this last game. One, they were facing the third best defense in the NBA in Houston, but two, they just didn't have a lot of time to prepare. So I think that Jordan can be better in a short-term role for Denver, but the Nuggets have to make sure to use that, and they have to be consistent in terms of getting those lobs, getting those offensive rebound opportunities for Jordan, putting themselves into a situation where Jordan can impact the game. But it really is just Mike at this point, because I think that Jamal can step up. He can create some shots. There will be some times that Murray struggles, of course, just like any other player, but he's going to try to put the team on his back a little bit here and try to create as many opportunities for guys as possible. Mike's got to get up more shots. That's the simple truth of it. Watching the game yesterday, he went 2 for 4, 0 for 2 from 3. The 2 threes that he took were contested. And the reason they were contested is because teams were like, well, who are we going to guard with Jokic out? Well, we're going to guard Murray. We're probably going to trap him. And then we're going to run Porter off the line. And that was all they had to do. They let Christian shoot for the most part. They let Russell Westbrook shoot for the most part. I got to be here and say, like, Porter's got to find ways to create shots for himself. And he is just so beholden to others creating shots for him when he's off the ball that he may really struggle in this stretch. He may not. Like, he may find an opportunity. He may be able to create some opportunities for himself, especially against a team like Miami, where is there really a guy on Miami that can guard him? No. Well, Haywood Highsmith would probably be the guy. Haywood Highsmith will probably have some opportunities there. And then Jimmy Butler's coming back from Miami, so we'll see if we'll see how he plays. But I do think that Porter's got some opportunities. He's got an opportunity to play here. He was guarded by Dylan Brooks for the most part in this last game. And that's a tough matchup for anybody, especially for a guy like Porter who isn't used to getting the Dylan Brooks assignment. Usually it's Jamal who gets that. But Jamal had to deal with Amen Thompson, who's a tremendous defender, and Fred VanVleet as well, who is just a thief with the ball. So, going to be fascinating to see whether Porter can consistently get up shots or not. Because I think Nuggets fans have long wanted Porter to get up more shots, to be a guy, like, be in a position where people just, they run the offense and Porter comes open and they pass the ball to Porter and he shoots and everything's great. But opposing teams know that too. And they absolutely do not want that to happen because they know how dangerous Porter can be when he is left open for three. So, are the Nuggets going to be able to generate those shots for him? I don't know. With Russell Westbrook there, with Jamal Murray operating as a point guard too, with those two guys, in theory, they should be able to still generate good shots for MPJ. We'll see whether they can. We'll see whether it actually happens. But, I mean, he's the guy that I think needs to step up. I saw somebody share earlier, Don't Tell Santa Cruz says, this is where the LaVine trade looks good because he can create his own shot. It's true. Like that is the natural difference between somebody like a LaVine and somebody like Porter. And I know Nuggets fans might get rubbed the wrong way by that. And I understand kind of getting away from the LaVine trade, especially when Denver's playing well. You want to buy into the core and you want to buy into that group where when Joker is out there, who are the best players to augment him? And I think Porter, in theory, is better for that skill set than LaVine. But I also, I've liked what LaVine has provided this year, and I think that there is at least a world where that is better for Denver. Again, though, this is not where Denver's at. They need to find a group that they have on the roster right now that is capable of this. And if Mike can level up a little bit without Jokic, then great. Who knows? Maybe Joker's just questionable for Miami and then plays in Miami. And he was like, yeah, it was just a little bit of a scare. I don't know. So that would be great. That would be great if we just got the MVP of the league back, the best player of the world back, 3-time MVP. Maybe 4 soon, but one other byproduct of this Jokic injury, by the way, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hasn't missed a game. The Thunder are significant. I think that Shai is probably jumping into the lead for that MVP. And Nuggets fans, I think, are going to have to get on board with that because they've been great, OKC, and Jokic has missed more time than he really ever has before. And if he misses even more time with this particular injury, then probably just got to bow out of that race, I would guess. All right, on that dour note, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. Thank you so much for tuning into the show, everyone. Apologies for it being a downer of an episode. I wish I had better news for people in this particular show. We'll see what Denver does. We'll see what the actual injury report leads to. And I'm very curious to see whether they can make it happen. Oh man. Gotta love the haters in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out if you enjoyed. I will talk to you guys very soon.